Ever think a parking lot could make or break a business? I mean, seriously, a parking lot.
Right.
It's wild. We're going deep on parking today
That's right.
and how it really impacts retail real estate, our
Right.
source material,
Yeah.
the parking pitfall. It's an article from the Eureka Business Group. They're a
Oh.
Texas commercial real estate firm,
Oh.
So buckle up, whether you're a business owner or just, love to shop, because this deep dive is going to be fascinating.
It's so easy to think of parking as just like a convenience thing,
Totally.
but it gets surprisingly complex.
Uh-huh.
Legally speaking, parking is tied to city zoning,
Okay.
occupancy regulations, even if a business can, like, legally operate.
Yeah, the article had this crazy story about businesses that couldn't even open
Why was
because they
that?
didn't have enough parking.
Oh, no.
They'd signed leases, renovations were done, and bam, no certificate of occupancy.
Wow. That's like a nightmare scenario.
Total nightmare. I mean,
Wow.
can you imagine the money and time wasted?
It's a huge deal. That's why you got to think about these regulations way early on.
Absolutely. So how do they even figure out how much parking a business needs?
It's actually a formula.
Oh, really?
Yeah, called a parking ratio.
Okay.
Cities use it to say exactly how many parking spaces each type of business has to have. So, like, a retail store might need one space for every 200 square feet.
Ah,
But a restaurant, they might need one for every 100 square feet.
interesting. So, think about a busy restaurant and a dentist's office
Yeah.
in the same shopping center.
Totally different parking needs.
How do landlords even manage that?
It's a total balancing act for sure. Imagine, right, a shopping center's already packed, parking-wise,
Okay.
and then this new hotspot restaurant wants to move in, but they need way more parking than what's available.
Yikes.
Throws everything off. The article called it a domino effect.
The domino effect. Yeah, I remember that. Limited parking equals unhappy tenants,
Yeah.
businesses leaving, trouble attracting good new ones,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. It can really drag a property down.
But you know what's interesting?
Hmm.
The article made this point that if you have good parking,
Yeah.
it can actually make your property way more desirable.
Oh, 100%.
Think about it. Have you ever picked a store just because it had better parking?
All the time. Especially, if I'm in a hurry.
Same here. Or if my arms are full of shopping bags. And don't even get me started on valet parking.
Oh, yeah.
Makes the whole experience feel fancy.
For sure. The article talked about efficient parking layouts, shared parking agreements, even valet.
Makes you realize it's not just paving a lot and calling it a day, huh?
Not even close. It's strategic.
Totally. And get this. The article had this tip about how tenants can actually use their lower parking needs
Really?
when they're negotiating their lease.
What? That's interesting.
Yeah, so if a business doesn't need tons of parking, they might get a better deal.
Oh, that makes sense. Wow, never thought of that.
Me neither. So parking's not just about, finding a spot. It's like a whole strategic game.
Exactly. Regulations, business needs, even negotiating tactics. It's wild.
This is blowing my mind. Parking is way more complex than anyone realizes.
I know, right? It impacts everything.
Legally operating a business,
Tenant happiness.
property values, the works.
It's a hidden world within retail real estate.
It really is.
Hmm.
All those times I've circled a packed parking lot getting frustrated.
No.
It's like now I see there's this whole other layer to it.
Absolutely. It makes you think, right? What happens to a city when parking is always an issue?
That is a great question. We'll definitely have to dig into that more. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back for more of this deep dive. This is making me think about all those times I've been stuck, circling a parking lot,
Oh, yeah.
getting super frustrated.
It's the worst.
But now I'm realizing there's actual strategy behind those layouts.
Right. It's not just cramming in as many spaces as possible.
Yeah.
The article talked about efficient parking layouts being super important. It's all about creating a flow,
Yeah.
So people can find a spot fast,
Right.
but also feel safe
Okay.
and comfortable.
Makes sense. I mean, a bad parking lot can totally ruin the
Like,
experience.
even if the stores are great.
Yeah, it can feel chaotic.
Yes. Especially during those peak hours,
Totally. And even unsafe.
For sure. That's why things like, clear signs and lighting are so important.
Right.
Even like landscaping, believe it or not.
Wow, I never thought about that. The article mentioned shared parking agreements, too.
Oh, yeah.
How do those even work?
So those are common in mixed-use developments.
Okay.
Or shopping centers where the businesses have like different peak times.
Oh.
So picture this. a restaurant that's packed at night.
Yeah.
They share their parking lot with an office building.
Okay.
That's empty after 5.
Right, so they're not competing for spaces.
Exactly. It's like
That-
a puzzle, right? Making the most of the space you have.
That's really smart.
But it takes planning, you know?
Yeah.
Landlords and tenants have to really work together.
It's interesting, though, because we've mostly talked about the problems with, like, not enough parking.
True.
But the article said that good parking, like ample parking,
Mm-hmm.
can actually make a property more competitive.
Oh, absolutely. Put yourself in a tenant's shoes.
Okay.
Would you rather deal with a parking nightmare or a place where parking is, you know, a breeze?
Easy choice. Give me the easy parking every time.
Exactly. And for landlords, think about it.
Yeah.
Good parking attracts good tenants,
Right.
keeps them happy.
Yeah.
Higher occupancy rates, maybe even higher rent.
So basically, investing in parking is a win-win.
Exactly. It's an investment in the whole property.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties back to that negotiation thing we talked about.
Oh, right, right.
The tenant who doesn't need a ton of parking,
Yeah,
they might be a landlord's dream, especially if parking's already tight.
totally. Now I really want to dive deeper into that whole negotiation
Yeah.
tactic. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
It's all about leverage, right? Imagine you're a landlord, limited parking,
Mm-hmm.
and then this tenant comes along who doesn't need much parking at all.
Like an online store or something.
Exactly. Or a business that's mostly, you know, appointments. They're solving your problem for you.
Before it even eyes a problem.
Exactly. That gives them power when they're negotiating that lease.
It's smart. This is so interesting.
It really shows they get it, you know?
Yeah.
It's not just about the space itself. It's about the whole, like, ecosystem.
You got to understand how it all fits together.
Exactly.
The whole deep dive has been amazing.
Right.
I never thought about parking this way before.
It's more than just convenience.
It really impacts everything. Businesses, the shopping experience, the whole shebang.
It's a hidden world, and it's everywhere.
Totally. What else did the article say? I want to hear it all. So a tenant who needs less parking basically has more leverage when they're negotiating a lease.
It's like a secret weapon. You know, you walk in, you're like, hey, I'm not going to add to your parking headache.
Right.
Landlords love that, especially if they're already dealing with, like, not enough spaces.
It's brilliant. This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I used to just, like, park and go.
I know, right?
I never thought about all the behind-the-scenes stuff.
It's like a whole other world.
Seriously, parking's not just about convenience. It's like this big strategic element of retail.
It affects everything from whether a business can even open its doors to how much the whole property is worth.
This deep dive has been a total game changer for me. We've gone from parking 101 to, like, zoning laws and even high-stakes negotiation tactics. It's wild.
And there's still so much more to explore. Like, what about the environmental impact of all these parking lots?
That's a good point.
And then you have all these new technologies popping up, like automated parking systems.
It makes you wonder, what's next for parking? Will we even have traditional parking lots in the future?
That's the big question, right? But one thing's for sure. Parking is going to keep playing a huge role in how our cities look and feel and how we shop.
I know I'll never look at a parking lot the same way again.
Me neither.
Thanks to this deep dive, I'll be thinking about zoning regulations, tenant negotiations, the whole 9 yards every time I pull into a shopping center.
You know, it's funny, right? Something as ordinary as a parking lot can be full of surprises.
Totally.
You just got to know where to look. So next time you're out there circling for a spot, take a minute to think about all the forces at play. You might start to see the humble parking lot in a whole new light.
I know I will. It's the unsung hero, or maybe the villain, of retail real estate. It just depends on how you look at it.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep those parking lots in mind as you head out into the world. You never know what insights you might uncover. Thanks for joining us.